Hello everybody, welcome back to my Pokemon review series. In this episode, we're going over a lot of people's most sought after Pokemon, the Delibird. Now, Delibird, what is it that makes it so sought after when it's one of the worst mons in the base games? Well, it's the fact that it really is unique in what it does, and it's the best at what it does, but let's just get right into it. Now, it's an ingredient specialist, which, if you know anything about ingredient specialists in this game, you know there's a lot of numbers and things that can play into their viability or not. And it's things that aren't even on this sheet, it's things that are on this sheet. What meals can they make? But anyway, before we get into that, it's the dozing sleep type. Now, I find this very interesting because if you know anything about the sleep types, typically speaking, flying types are slumbering. So Delibird being of the dozing type is an exception. Typically, there's some sort of lore explanation for when there's an exception like that, like baby Pokemon are always slumbering. The Mankey line is always dozing instead of slumbering because it's just angry, and other things like that. So, to see the Delibird line, or just Delibird being dozing, I guess maybe it's saying that Santa doesn't get sleep because he's flying around at night, so to drop off presents or something? I don't know. But anyway, moving past that, it's an ingredient specialist, which the big things that play into ingredient specialist viability are its ingredient rate, its frequency, and what ingredients it has. It can be minorly impacted by its bag space as well. Now, the Delibird, it's got a really big bag space, actually. When we talk about other ingredient specialists, this is a really big number on, like, the Dragonite, who has the same number, but this is less than what you'd think it is because it's on a single stage Pokemon, so it doesn't gain the benefits of evolution, which means it's effectively nerfed by 10 just because this guy doesn't evolve. So after evolution, this is 28, which is actually decent. It's not terrible. It's not really great either, but it's not going to really be running into that many inventory problems unless you have like Berry Finding S on this guy. So especially with a speed this fast. It's not the fastest in the game, but it's a little bit faster than average. Typically 4640 is about the average, and this is 4140, so it's about 5 minutes faster than what I see as like the most typical speeds in this game. But then its ingredient rate. Now, its ingredient rate is a little bit low. When we look at this ingredient rate of 18.8%, that's like just under what Quagsire gets, and Quagsire produces a sizable amount, but he gets his value from big procs. And if you look at its procs, looking at a 2-5-7 split here, which is like the average, I'd say, for what an ingredient mon is focusing. So overall, if you look at this guy's stats, he doesn't really come off as that great that so many players would be wanting him. Now, another big thing that plays in its desirability is actually because of its rarity. It takes 16 pips to catch, and it is pretty much a Snowdrop exclusive because it's so rare that you're rarely going to see it at Greengrass. You can see it at Greengrass, and usually if you do, you try to catch it because it is a rare spawn, and it's a good spawn, but if you want to hunt it, you really have to go to Snowdrop. And Delibird and Abomasnow, which Abomasnow is basically Delibird Light, are pretty much the only things at Snowdrop that are meta relevant. One can make the case for Spheal as well. Yeah, I think that's about it, honestly. Spheal, Delibird, and Abomasnow. So committing yourself to going to Snowdrop to hunt the Delibird is a big commitment because you're missing out on a lot of other good spawns. And even there, it's a rare spawn. So what makes it worth the hassle, though? When it's got the low ingredient rate, the meh speed, and the meh bag space, it's really in this ingredient list. Now, when we look at all the Pokemon in the game that can farm eggs, when we look across this, at level 30, just nothing even comes close to how many eggs it can output. It's in a landslide victory. Almost 50% more than the Abomasnow, which is the second place. If you get an Abomasnow with double egg all the way up to level 60, then it actually is pretty comparable. In fact, even Beware is kind of comparable to them as well, which is interesting because a lot of people don't think of Beware as an egg farmer, but there's some potential there if you have a really, really jacked one, but eh. Now, the Delibird's real only competition is Abomasnow, which, if you're at Snowdrop hunting the Delibird, you may as well catch Abomasnows as well, or Snovers, because you're probably going to stumble upon one. You're probably going to stumble upon a Snover with the right stats than before the Delibird. But the Delibird really is that true mono egg Pokemon that a lot of players desire. Even though the difference really isn't that much, I'd actually recommend hunting the Abomasnow before the Delibird, and if you happen to catch the Delibird, then go for it. But because the difference is so small. Now, the big thing that makes the Delibird better than the Abomasnow is the Abomasnow is not really coming online until 60. The Delibird is working and doing its job from levels 1 all the way through 60. So, if you need an early game, or you need eggs now, a really powerful egg farmer now, and don't have the time to invest to level 60, then this is kind of your guy, but with how rare he is, it's just very difficult. On top of that, Abomasnow getting double eggs is twice as common as Delibird getting mono egg, because the middle one is weighted differently to have a 1 in 3 odds when it's the same ingredient as the base. So, the Delibird is just... It's got a rarer ingredient list desired, it's a rarer spawn, it takes more pips to catch, it's just overall worse. Well, in all those regards, except for productivity of eggs. But what is it that makes eggs so desired is another question here. And that really comes down to this. Now, in the past, up until recently, the Flower Gift Macaroons were the second strongest dish in the entire game, the strongest dessert. This has changed because of coffee, and maybe the new coffee meta will make the eggs a little less necessary for people who maybe just gun for this meal instead. But as of right now, the egg requirement in some of these meals is just absurd. The cross-chopped salad even, 20 eggs. The Flower Gift Macaroons, 25 eggs. Fruity Flan, 20 or 15 eggs. Those are really high requirements. So having a good egg farmer is powerful for making a lot of these top tier dishes, because without a good egg farmer, you're never going to be pulling in this number of eggs. Even in stockpiling week. So like even if you wanted to stockpile enough eggs to last this meal an entire week, running any other egg farmer aside from a Delibird or an Abomasnow at level 60 is going to take so long of stockpiling that it's going to be difficult to get that meal requirement, because they're big meals. So that's like the huge advantage of the mono egg. Now, I like to discuss these other ingredient lists in all my videos. If you go back and watch all my other videos, this is one of the few circumstances where I'm really going to only recommend the mono egg. If you have the Abomasnow, then you can think about these other options, but I wouldn't ever recommend hunting a 16-pip Pokemon for a niche usage. And really, when you're looking at these other ones, you're looking at niches that could be power crept. It can give them a unique identity, but this guy already has a unique identity as the mono egg farmer, so it's not really worth it to consider these that much. However, there is some very, very interesting synergies. If there was more options for eggs, then maybe you would go for one of these. But let's get into what makes these interesting. Apples and eggs. This Fruity Flan, as I discussed earlier, if you have the ABA list, it comes pretty close to the right ratios for making the Fruity Flan, which is a really powerful meal. Additionally, it just takes honey and milk. Aside from that, I actually don't know. Is there any Pokemon with honey and milk? I don't know. Any ingredient specialists, at least? I don't think so. A Meowscarada. Wait, no. It doesn't have honey at 60. No, that's ginger. So, no Pokemon's really... If there was one that had honey and milk, then that would make this extra interesting, because you can cover it in 2 Pokemon. But as of right now, you can cover one of them in your in your Delibird, and then you can run a honey Pokemon, and then maybe, since milk is such a low requirement, you could even run something like a mono milk evolution to get that little milk requirement. So, just there's interesting potential there. And also there's a lot of meals that actually take apples as well. And a decent amount that take apples and eggs up here as well, with the gluttony potato salad and the egg bomb curry. These meals are a bit weaker, and I wouldn't really recommend them all that much. This egg bomb, they are above my line that I typically draw right here, but this line kind of does have an asterisk. It's not perfect. I actually really hate the egg bomb curry, just because it takes 4 different ingredients. Like, what is this? 4 potatoes in a meal? I think that is the lowest ingredient requirement of any meal in the game. And it's more just annoying to have to get 4 potatoes. It's not worth running an ingredient farmer for. There aren't that many berry specialists or skill specialists with potatoes on them as far as I know. So, like, they could cover it, but there aren't that many of them. So, it's just a weird meal, and I don't recommend it because it's overly complex for the value it gives. Like, the reason why the Spore Mushroom Curry is so good, and can be very good, asterisks can be very good, it's not so good, but can be useful, is the fact that it only takes 2 different ingredients and can be made by 1 Pokemon in Quagsire alone. 1 Pokemon making this meal, very strong. 2 Pokemon making this meal, not as strong. So, I don't really recommend it, but it's an option. Same thing with the gluttony potato salad. Same issue of it's just not strong enough to really justify running it when it has 4 different ingredients. So really the only one you're looking at with the egg and apple is the Fruity Flan. But then, and that's really to be said about this one and this one, the AAB list isn't as good because it's not as close to the right ratio. And it's also rarer. This one's going to be double the likelihood of this one. So really you're hoping for this one more so than this one. But if this one comes up and it's got the right rates, you know, maybe it's worth running. This one you're looking at as a substitute for Skeledirge, and it's really not worth it. You don't want the apple, you don't want double apple at least on Delibird, just because it doesn't compete with Skeledirge like at all. Even if you assume an ABA list, it's not. Skeledirge is insane. Let's just put it that way. It's worse than a Crocolore. So, it's worse than an Absol, worse than a Pinsir. There are so many other better options for apples. I guess it's not worse than the ABA Skeledirge, but it's not that far off from being worse than the ABA Skeledirge. So, just overall, this isn't it. If you catch a really good one and you don't have a Skeledirge or any of the other apple farmers, then maybe you can consider it. But Delibird just, it really wants the eggs. Egg Cacao is also interesting because of the flower gift macarons. Now, this is probably the most viable mixed ingredient option, in my opinion. It's not going to be producing enough of either to be able to make this meal consistently. But if you, in preparation, stockpile a bunch of eggs, stockpile a bunch of cacao, then you can use this guy as, like, you run him and you aid him with the stockpiled ingredients to make this meal consistently. So you're getting maximum value out of the Delibird. So I think this is the best option. ABC is definitely the worst because there's no meals that take all 3 ingredients at the same time of cacao, eggs, apples. There's some interesting synergy between cacao and apples. There's some interesting synergy between eggs, apples, and eggs, cacao. But it's going to be trying to spread itself too thin when there's no meal that really wants all 3. And while there is some things you can do with that, you can do some interesting things with that. I do that with my Tyranitar. It needs, like, the best sub-skills imaginable. And that is the case with my personal Tyranitar. So, yeah, you really don't want the ABC list, but you really don't want any list but the AAA. Maybe the ABA, maybe the AAC. Only time will tell. If they ever get another egg farmer, I would suggest never hunting this guy. Just because it is a hassle. There have been multiple horror stories of people just hunting Delibird for months, stationed at Snowdrop. And because it is such a rare spawn that takes so many pips, it's just not a fun or easy hunt. And unless you don't have anything else to hunt, I wouldn't recommend it. Just go for the Abomasnow. And if you see a Delibird while you're there hunting the Abomasnow, you know what? Throw some biscuits at it. Try to catch it. But don't make it the target of your hunt. I just realized I never talked about its skill. It's got Ingredient Magnet S. It's not the best at it. It's got a really low skill trigger rate. You're really not going to get any more extra ingredients out of it. But it's there. I kind of like it's fine. It's a decent skill on ingredient specialists. I like the charge energy the most, but this works too. So, well, I hope you've learned something about the Delibird, learned how to use it, thought a bit about its role in the meta. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you.